violation of the HOA rules!
What are you talking about?
The boat, it's not compliant!
Let's just all calm down.
Calm down!
Marcus Webb's hands ached as he gripped the steering wheel, the 3-hour drive from Minneapolis stretching every tired muscle in his body. The Hernandez case had almost gone sideways, a protected witness spotted by a cartel scout at a grocery store, necessitating an emergency relocation at 2 in the morning. 48 hours of no sleep, cold coffee, and the kind of adrenaline that left you hollow afterward. The gates of Pine Ridge Shores appeared through the pines like a promise. Wrought iron, tasteful stone pillars, a keypad his late Uncle Ray's attorney had programmed for him. The mechanism hummed, and Marcus drove through into what looked like a postcard. Pristine lakefront properties, manicured lawns, wooden docks extending into water so blue it hurt to look at. Uncle Ray's cabin sat at the end of Lakeview Drive. Not really a cabin, more of a custom-built retreat with floor-to-ceiling windows and a wraparound deck. Marcus had inherited it 6 weeks ago and hadn't had time to visit until now. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the silence. No sirens, no radio chatter, just wind through pine trees and the distant call of a loon. His boat trailer rattled as he backed it toward the private dock. The aluminum fishing boat wasn't fancy, a 14-footer Ray had kept in pristine condition. Marcus had the hitch nearly aligned when he heard the voice. excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" A woman power walked across his lawn, phone held high, camera pointed at him. Mid-40s, blonde highlights gone brassy in the sun, yoga pants, and a pink fleece vest with HOA board member embroidered on the chest. Her face was already twisted in that particular expression Marcus had learned to recognize in his career, the look of someone who'd mistaken authority for power. "I'm unloading my boat," Marcus said evenly, turning to face her. "Your boat is in violation of Pine Ridge Shores Community Standards, Section 4.2, subsection B, which clearly states that watercraft stored at private docks cannot exceed 14 feet in length." She moved closer, phone camera sweeping from the boat to Marcus's face. "This vessel is clearly 14 feet 6 inches, which constitutes a material violation subject to fines of $500 per occurrence." Marcus blinked. "It's a 14-foot boat. I measured it last week when you weren't here." She tapped her phone screen. 6 inches over regulation. "Furthermore, your outdoor lighting is creating light pollution in violation of Section 7.1, and your waste receptacles are visible from the street in violation of Section 9.4. I'm documenting everything for the board." "Ma'am, I just inherited this property. I haven't even unpacked yet. If there are issues, I'm happy to." "The rules apply to everyone, mister." She waited for him to fill in the blank. Marcus stayed silent. His training had taught him never to volunteer information to hostile actors. Her smile went sharp. "Well, whoever you are, you'll be receiving certified letters outlining your violations and associated fines. I suggest you retain legal counsel because Pine Ridge Shores HOA has foreclosure authority for non-compliance." She lowered the phone slightly. "This is a family community. We have standards." "I understand. I'll review the HOA regulations tonight and make any necessary adjustments." "Tonight," she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The violations are already logged. The fines are already being processed. You should have reviewed the regulations before you moved in." Marcus felt the familiar weight settling behind his eyes, the kind of exhaustion that came from dealing with people who'd never faced real consequences. "Ma'am, I'm asking you politely to leave my property so I can finish unloading." Her expression changed. Something calculated slid across her face, and she raised the phone camera again. "Are you threatening me?" "No, I'm asking you to leave." "You sound very aggressive right now, very threatening." Her thumb moved on the screen, uploading, Marcus realized, live streaming or posting to social media. "I'm a woman alone, and you're a large man using intimidating language." Marcus took a breath through his nose. "I'm not threatening you, I'm asking you to respect my property line." "I'm calling 911. She kept the camera on him as she switched apps, her voice already trembling with practiced fear. "Yes, hello. I need police at 247 Lakeview Drive in Pine Ridge Shores. There's a man here who's being very aggressive and threatening. I'm scared. Please hurry. She ended the call and smiled at him. Actually smiled. Marcus stood perfectly still. He'd seen this playbook before: create a crisis, control the narrative, weaponize the response. The sheriff's department would arrive, see an upset woman and a calm man, and make assumptions. Except Marcus had spent 23 years learning how to document, how to stay clean, how to let the system work. "You can wait over there," he said, pointing to the street, "until the deputies arrive." "I'll wait right here, thank you. This is community property up to the survey line." She wasn't on community property, she was 4 feet onto his lawn, but Marcus said nothing. He pulled out his own phone and began recording, keeping the camera low and casual. 8 minutes later, 2 Hennepin County Sheriff's cruisers rolled up. The woman, Marcus still didn't know her name, immediately rushed toward them, one hand pressed to her chest. "Thank God you're here. He came at me, told me I had to leave, used very threatening language. I was just trying to explain the community rules, and he became hostile." The first deputy, a young guy with a fresh haircut, looked at Marcus with neutral assessment. The second deputy, older with sergeant stripes, walked the property line with his eyes. "Sir, what's your side?" the young deputy asked. Marcus reached slowly into his jacket pocket. "I'm going to show you my credentials. No sudden movements." He pulled out his badge case and flipped it open. U.S. Marshal, Regional Supervisor, Minneapolis District. The sergeant's eyebrows went up. He looked at the woman, then back at Marcus, and something shifted in his expression. "Marshal Webb," the sergeant said carefully, "what happened here?" Marcus laid it out in 30 seconds. Inherited property, first visit, unloading boat, confrontation, request to leave, 911 call. No emotion, just facts. The young deputy was already reviewing his body cam footage. "Ma'am, did you call 911 and claim you were being threatened?" Yes, because I felt threatened. He was aggressive." "He asked you to leave his property," the sergeant said flatly. "That's not a threat." The woman's face flushed. "You don't understand, he was." "Ma'am, I understand perfectly." The sergeant's voice had gone cold. "You made a false 911 call. We've got dash cam of you smiling after you hung up. That's a crime." I didn't." She looked between the deputies, realizing how badly this had turned. "You're taking his side because he's a federal agent." "We are taking the side of the truth," the sergeant said. "You're free to go, but if we get another call like this from your address, we'll be filing charges." She stared at Marcus with pure hatred, then turned and walked away, her phone still clutched in her hand. The sergeant waited until she was out of earshot. "Good luck, Marshal. That's Diane Kellerman. She runs the HOA like her personal fiefdom. You just made an enemy." Marcus watched her disappear into a house 3 doors down, curtains already twitching. "Story of my life," he said quietly. The Minneapolis Federal Building's parking garage had never looked so good. Marcus pulled into his reserved space Monday morning, the weekend's confrontation already feeling like something from another world. He had 3 depositions scheduled, a witness transport to coordinate, and a stack of case files that wouldn't read themselves. His phone buzzed as he locked the truck, email notification, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. All from Pine Ridge Shores, HOA. Marcus leaned against the truck bed and opened the first one. Official letterhead, legal boilerplate, a detailed list of violations. Boat length exceeding specifications, $500. Outdoor lighting noncompliance, $300. Visible waste receptacles, $750. Unauthorized dock modifications. Marcus stopped reading. The boat slip had been there for 15 years. The second email contained photographs. His cabin from multiple angles, time-stamped, annotated with red arrows pointing to alleged violations. Someone had been thorough. The third email was a formal notice of lay-in intent. Failure to pay assessed fines within 30 days would result in legal action up to and including foreclosure proceedings. Total amount due, $15,400. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't about rules, this was warfare. His deputy marshal, Sarah Chen, knocked on his office door an hour later. "You okay? You look like someone shot your dog." "Worse, HOA problems." Sarah laughed, then saw his face. "You're serious?" "Remember that cabin I inherited? Apparently the neighbor runs the homeowners association like the Stasi." Marcus turned his monitor so she could see the emails. 15 grand in fines for a boat that's been docked there since 2010. Sarah scrolled through the violations, her expression darkening. "This is targeted harassment. You need to document everything." "Already started." "No, I mean everything. Get cameras, record every interaction, treat it like you're building a case, because you are." She pointed at the Leon notice. "They can actually take your property if you don't fight this." Marcus knew she was right. He spent his lunch hour calling a real estate attorney who confirmed what Sarah had said. HOA liens were real, enforceable, and in Minnesota, they could absolutely force a foreclosure sale. "How much will it cost to fight?" Marcus asked. "More than 15,000, the attorney said, "unless you can prove harassment and get sanctions, but that's difficult. HOAs have broad authority." Marcus hung up and stared at his computer screen. The Hernandez case file sat open, demanding his attention. A cartel hitman was potentially hunting a protected witness, and Marcus was worrying about dock regulations. His phone rang. Hennepin County Zoning Department. "Mr. Webb, we received a complaint about illegal commercial activity at 247 Lakeview Drive. We need to schedule an inspection." "What commercial activity?" "The complaint states you're operating an unlicensed business from a residential property. Multiple vehicles, unusual hours, possible illegal transport operations." Marcus closed his eyes. The unmarked federal vehicles. The witness transport last month when he'd stopped at the cabin to grab equipment. "That was official federal business. I'm a U.S. Marshal." "I understand, sir, but we still need to verify the complaint. Can you be available Thursday at 10? He agreed and hung up. Before he could set the phone down, it rang again. County Noise Control. Someone had reported excessive noise violations, multiple instances, late-night disturbances. Marcus hadn't spent a single night at the cabin yet. By Wednesday, he'd received calls from the county health department about alleged septic violations, the fire marshal about illegal burn barrels that didn't exist, and the DNR about unauthorized shoreline modifications he hadn't made. Every single complaint traced back to the same source, Diane Kellerman, 244 Lakeview Drive. The county inspector who showed up Thursday was apologetic. "I gotta tell you, Marshal, this lady has called us 6 times in 4 days. Illegal business, environmental hazards, you name it." He walked the property, checked the septic system, examined the dock. "Everything's up to code. Actually, it's better than most properties I inspect." "So what happens now?" The inspector shrugged. "I file my report saying no violations found, but she'll probably just call again with something new. Had a situation like this couple years back. Woman drove her neighbor into bankruptcy with complaints. County finally banned her from filing for 6 months. He lowered his voice. "Between you and me, document everything. These HOA types, they're relentless." That evening, Marcus drove back to the cabin despite his exhaustion. He needed to install security cameras before this escalated further. The sun was setting as he pulled into the driveway, painting the lake in shades of orange and purple that would have been peaceful under different circumstances. A car was parked on the public access road 50 yards from his property. Silver Lexus SUV. Someone sat in the driver's seat, binoculars raised. Marcus parked and began unloading the security equipment from his truck bed, moving deliberately slowly. The binoculars tracked him. When he walked toward the dock, the binoculars followed. When he went inside the cabin, the car stayed put. He set up the first camera aimed at the driveway, the second covering the dock, the third watching the road. motion-activated, cloud storage, timestamp authentication, the same system he used for witness-safe houses. Through the camera feed on his phone, he watched the Lexus, watched Diane Kellerman photograph his truck, his boat, his license plate. She was building a file just like he was. His work phone buzzed. Text from his deputy, "We have a problem." Marcus called her back immediately. "Someone contacted the local news tip line," Sarah said without preamble. "Anonymous report about suspicious federal activity in Pine Ridge Shores. Unmarked vehicles, strange hours, possible witness protection operation." The reporter called our office asking for comment. Jesus Christ. It gets worse. The tip included your cabin's address. If this goes public, if your location gets connected to witness operations, we have to relocate Hernandez and everyone else who's ever been through that facility. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Witness relocation cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. More importantly, it put people at risk during the transfer window. The cartels had spotters everywhere, waiting for exactly this kind of operational disruption. "Kill the story," Marcus said. "Call in whatever favors we need to." Already done, but Marcus, whoever made that call, knew enough to be dangerous. They knew about the unmarked vehicles. They knew to mention witness protections specifically. Marcus looked at his phone's camera feed. Diane Kellerman was still sitting in her car, still watching his cabin, still taking photographs. "She's posting about me on social media," Marcus said slowly. "Neighborhood Facebook groups, calling me dangerous, unstable, suspicious." "That's a security breach, you know that." "I know. So what are you going to do?" Marcus watched Diane's car on the screen. She'd been sitting there for 40 minutes now, documenting everything, building her case while simultaneously destroying his ability to do his job. "Same thing I always do," he said. "Document, build the case, let her dig her own grave. And if she compromises, an active operation first." The question hung in the air. Marcus didn't have an answer. After Sarah hung up, he sat on the deck and watched the lake darken. His phone buzzed with a new email. Pine Ridge Shores HOA sent to all residents. Community safety alert. New resident at 247 Lakeview has history of aggressive behavior toward women. Multiple violations documented. Recommend avoiding contact. Board is pursuing all legal remedies to maintain our family-friendly environment. 43 people had already liked the post. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, a certified mail notification. He'd been served with a restraining order petition. The hearing was scheduled in 2 weeks. Diane Kellerman versus Marcus Webb. Petitioner claims stalking, harassment, and threats. Marcus set his phone down and stared at the lake. The water was perfectly still now, reflecting stars that were just beginning to appear. Some battles found you, whether you wanted them or not. The surveillance started at 6:15 in the morning. Marcus was pouring his first coffee when movement caught his eye through the kitchen window. The silver Lexus, parked in the exact same spot as yesterday, 50 yards down the public access road. Diane Kellerman sat in the driver's seat, thermos in hand, binoculars resting on the dashboard. She was waiting for him to leave for work. Marcus took his time with breakfast, watching her watch him through the security camera feeds on his tablet. She photographed him carrying his briefcase to the truck. She zoomed in on his license plate, again, even though she'd already done that 3 times. When he backed out of the driveway, she waited exactly 30 seconds before pulling out to follow him. He lost her intentionally at the highway interchange, taking the ramp at the last second. In his rearview mirror, he saw her stranded in the wrong lane, phone pressed to her ear, probably calling someone to report his evasive driving as something suspicious. The pattern continued for 3 days. Every morning she was there. Every evening when he returned to the cabin, she materialized within 20 minutes. She'd park in different spots, the public beach access, the community mailbox area, a turnout near the gated entrance, but always with clear sightlines to his property. His security cameras captured everything. Diane photographing his trash bins on collection day, Diane measuring his dock with a tape measure while he was at work, Diane walking the property line with a notebook documenting God knows what. Friday afternoon, Marcus was reviewing surveillance footage when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Wednesday morning. 7:43 a.m. Diane photographing the license plate of an unmarked black Suburban that had stopped at his cabin for 30 seconds. The vehicle belonged to Deputy Marshal Chen, who dropped off case files on her way to a transport. Thursday evening, 6:12 p.m., Diane photographing a dark blue sedan that had pulled into his driveway briefly. That was Agent Kowalski from the FBI, coordinating on a joint fugitive task force. She wasn't just documenting HOA violations anymore. She was building a file on federal law enforcement operations. Marcus called Sarah Chen immediately. "We need to move the Hernandez safe house," he said without preamble. "Already in progress, but Marcus, that's the third relocation in 6 weeks. The brass is asking questions. Better than having a civilian compromise the location. She's really photographing our vehicles. Time-stamped, high resolution, probably has our plate numbers cross-referenced by now." Marcus scrolled through more footage. "She's doing 8 to 10 surveillance runs per week. This isn't about HOA rules anymore. This is obsession." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "You need to talk to a lawyer, like today." Marcus had an appointment scheduled for Monday, but Monday felt very far away. Saturday morning, he was cleaning his fishing gear on the dock when he heard footsteps on the wooden planks behind him. He turned, instinctively cataloging exits and defensive positions, but it was just an old man in waders and a faded twins cap. "You're Ray's nephew," the man said, statement not question. "Marcus Webb," he extended his hand. "George Patterson, I live 4 houses down, the place with the blue shutters." George's grip was firm despite the age spots on his hands. "Thought I should introduce myself before Diane tells you I'm dangerous too." Marcus smiled despite himself. "She's been busy." "That's one word for it." George settled onto the dock railing with the ease of someone who'd spent 70-odd years around water. "She ran off the Hendersons in 2021. Nice young couple, had a baby. Diane decided their fence was 3 inches into the setback, filed complaints with the county every week for 8 months, cost them 30 grand in legal fees before they finally sold at a loss and left." Jesus. The Kowalskis made it 2 years. She claimed their kid's treehouse was an unauthorized structure, got the county involved, threatened fines, made their lives hell. They moved to Duluth. George pulled out a fishing lure and examined it. "My wife and I, we keep our heads down, pay our HOA dues, don't make waves, but we've watched her destroy 3 families now. Why doesn't anyone stop her? She's got the votes on the HOA board, her friends, mostly people she's helped terrorize others, and her husband's some big-shot lawyer. People are scared." George glanced back toward Diane's house. "Although I heard an interesting rumor yesterday." Marcus waited. "Shirley Chen, no relation to your deputy, I assume. She does the HOA accounting. She mentioned that Diane's husband is a federal prosecutor, works on organized crime cases or something." George looked at Marcus meaningfully. "That true?" Marcus felt something click into place. "What's his name?" "Todd something, Kellerman, same as her." Todd Kellerman, assistant U.S. attorney. Marcus had worked with him on 2 multi-agency task forces last year. Good prosecutor, detail-oriented, played by the book. They'd coordinated witness testimony, evidence chains, case strategy. Marcus's cabin was 3 doors down from his colleague's house, and he'd never made the connection because he'd never been here before Ray died. "You okay?" George asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that." Marcus's mind was racing. Did Todd know what his wife was doing? Did he know she was photographing federal vehicles, potentially compromising active investigations? "Anyway," George continued, "I wanted to warn you, Diane doesn't stop. She doesn't get bored. She doesn't forgive. You're in for a war and she plays dirty." He stood up slowly, joints creaking. My advice, don't let her isolate you. She thrives when people are alone. Appreciate the warning. George paused at the end of the dock. One more thing, she always escalates. Always. Whatever she's doing now, it'll get worse before it gets better. Be ready. After George left, Marcus sat on the dock for a long time, watching the lake and thinking. Todd Kellerman was a good prosecutor. Ethical, thorough, respected. But he was also married to a woman who weaponized the legal system against neighbors for sport. Did he participate? Did he help her? Or was he simply blind to what happened when he wasn't looking? Marcus's phone buzzed. Email from Pine Ridge Shores HOA, mandatory board hearing. Marcus Webb, 247 Lakeview Drive, must appear before HOA board on June 15th at 7:00 p.m. to address accumulated violations and defend against foreclosure proceedings. Failure to appear will result in automatic judgment against property owner. June 15th was the same day as his restraining order hearing. Diane had scheduled them to conflict deliberately. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. You don't belong here. Leave before you regret it. Marcus screenshot the message and added it to his evidence folder. Then he called his attorney and left a voicemail explaining the situation, the surveillance, the timeline conflicts. When he hung up, he noticed the Lexus was back. Diane sat in the driver's seat, camera with a telephoto lens now visible. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. Marcus stood up from the dock and looked directly at her, raised his phone, took a photograph of her photographing him. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Even from 50 yards away, Marcus could see her smile. She wanted him to know she was watching, wanted him to feel hunted, violated, powerless. But Marcus had spent 2 decades hunting people who actually knew how to disappear. He'd tracked fugitives across 3 countries, protected witnesses from cartel hitmen, coordinated operations involving dozens of agencies. Diane Kellerman was dangerous, yes, relentless, absolutely. But she'd never faced someone who knew how to fight back with patience, documentation, and the full weight of federal authority. She just didn't know it yet. Marcus went inside and pulled up the county records database. Time to find out exactly how many complaints Diane had filed, how many legal actions she'd initiated, how many lives she'd disrupted. If she wanted to build a case against him, he'd build one against her. The difference was, his would be true. The process server caught Marcus in the federal building parking garage on a Tuesday morning. Young guy, apologetic, handed over the envelope like he was delivering bad news about a terminal diagnosis. Marcus Webb, you've been served. Marcus took the envelope and signed the acknowledgement. The server practically ran back to his car. Inside was a 32-page restraining order petition. Diane Kellerman, petitioner, Marcus Webb, respondent. The language was florid, dramatic, and precisely calculated to destroy him. Respondent has engaged in a pattern of stalking, harassment, and intimidation designed to threaten petitioner's safety and peace of mind. On multiple occasions, respondent has stared at petitioner's home for extended periods. Respondent follows petitioner in his vehicle. Respondent has made threatening statements including, "You'll regret this," and "People like you always get what's coming." Petitioner fears for her physical safety and believes respondent, who carries a firearm as part of his employment, poses an imminent threat of violence. Marcus read it twice, standing in the concrete garage with exhaust fumes swirling around him. Every statement was either complete fabrication or a grotesque distortion of reality. He'd never followed her, she followed him. He'd never made threats. He'd asked her to leave his property. The staring was him looking out his own windows. But it was professionally written, convincing, exactly the kind of petition that could make a judge issue a temporary order. The hearing was scheduled for June 15th at 9 a.m. in Hennepin County District Court. Marcus walked to his office in a daze. Sarah took one look at his face and closed the door behind him. What happened? He handed her the petition. She read it, her expression darkening with each page. This is bullshit. Documented bullshit, Marcus said. She's got photos, timestamps, affidavits from neighbors I've never met. You need to fight this, like scorched earth fight this. Sarah set the papers down. Marcus, if a restraining order gets issued against a federal law enforcement officer, your security clearance gets flagged. You know that. He did know that. A domestic violence restraining order, even a falsely obtained one, triggered mandatory reviews. His career wouldn't necessarily end, but it would be damaged, questioned. Every operation he'd ever run would be scrutinized for signs of unstable behavior. I have evidence, Marcus said. Security footage, documentation of her harassment, the false 911 call. You need more than evidence, you need a strategy. Sarah pulled out her phone. My sister's a family law attorney, let me call her. By that afternoon, Marcus was sitting in a glass-walled conference room with Jennifer Chen, who looked like a younger, sharper version of her sister. She'd already reviewed the petition and had color-coded post-it notes flagged throughout. This is extremely well-crafted, Jennifer said without preamble. Whoever wrote this knows exactly how restraining order hearings work. They've anticipated your defenses and preemptively countered them. How? Look at paragraph 12. She claims you installed security cameras specifically to surveil her, that your cameras are pointed at her property, not yours. Jennifer flipped to an attached exhibit. She's got photos of your cameras with angles marked. A casual judge might believe her. The cameras face my property. She's lying. I know, but we need to prove it definitively. I want the raw footage from every camera with metadata intact. I want installation receipts showing the dates, after her harassment started, not before. I want written statements from your security company confirming the camera angles and fields of view. Marcus nodded, taking notes. Next, paragraph 18. She claims you've made threatening statements. We need to prove you haven't. Do you have recordings of your interactions? 1. The first confrontation. My phone was recording audio in my pocket. Perfect, get that to me with a chain of custody document. We'll need to authenticate it. Jennifer flipped more pages. Now, the neighbors who signed affidavits, have you met any of these people? Marcus scanned the names. No, I've been to the cabin maybe 6 times total. The only neighbor I've talked to is George Patterson, and he's not on this list. So she's collected statements from people who have never interacted with you. That's actually good for us. They're testifying based on hearsay, what she told them, not what they witnessed. Jennifer made a note. We'll subpoena them if necessary. Most will fold under cross-examination. There's something else, Marcus said. He explained about Todd Kellerman, about their professional relationship, about the federal task forces and coordinated prosecutions. Jennifer's eyes widened. Her husband is your colleague, and she doesn't know. I don't think so. We've never met socially. I've been to their house exactly 0 times. Does he know she's filing this petition? I have no idea. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, thinking, that's leverage. Not in court. Judges hate it when people try to use professional relationships to influence cases. But personally, if Todd finds out his wife is trying to destroy his colleague's career with false allegations, she smiled, that could end this before it starts. Or it could make her escalate, Marcus said. True, Jennifer closed the petition. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to build an airtight defense. Every claim she makes, we're going to systematically disprove with documentary evidence. Then, we're going to file a countermotion showing her pattern of harassment against multiple neighbors. We're going to make the judge see exactly who she is. How much is this going to cost? More than you want to hear. Restraining order defense, especially against someone this organized, 15 to 20,000 if it goes to trial, maybe more. Marcus felt something tight in his chest. Between legal fees and HOA fines, Diane was going to cost him more than the cabin was worth. But Jennifer continued, if we win, and I think we can, we'll petition for sanctions. We'll make her pay your attorney's fees. We'll put her pattern of harassment on the record. It won't make you whole, but it'll hurt her. Over the next week, Marcus built his defense like he'd build a federal case. He obtained the raw security footage from all cameras, burned to DVD with digital signatures and timestamps. He got written statements from the security installation company confirming dates, angles, and fields of view. He retrieved the body cam footage from the sheriff's deputies who'd responded to Diane's false 911 call, complete with their written incident reports. He pulled county records going back 5 years. Diane had filed 47 complaints against neighbors, not 7 or 12, 47. Noise violations, zoning disputes, fence heights, tree trimming, paint colors, holiday decorations. She'd filed 3 previous restraining order petitions, all dismissed. One stood out, Diane Kellerman and Todd Kellerman versus James Morrison, 2019, joint petition. Todd had co-signed a restraining order request against a neighbor who'd allegedly threatened his wife during an HOA dispute. Marcus stared at the record, so Todd did participate at least once. He called Jennifer. Her husband has helped her before. 2019, they filed a joint restraining order. Against who? James Morrison. I'll send you the case file. Jennifer was quiet while she pulled it up. Dismissed. Judge found no credible evidence of threats, but interesting, the petition language is almost identical to what she filed against you. Same phrases, same structure. She's done this before. Successfully, no, but yes, this is a pattern that's gold for us. Jennifer paused. Marcus, I need to ask you something. Do you want me to subpoena Todd Kellerman? What? As a witness, force him to testify about his wife's history of false complaints, about the Morrison case, about whether he knows what she's currently doing. It would be devastating to her case. Marcus thought about it, thought about Todd sitting in a witness box, forced to choose between his wife and the truth, thought about the professional relationship, the cases they'd worked together, the mutual respect. No, Marcus said finally, not unless we have to. You're being too nice. Maybe, but I'm not interested in destroying him, just stopping her. Noble, possibly stupid, but noble. The subpoena arrived at Marcus's office 3 days before the hearing. Not for him, he was already a party. This one was addressed to Deputy Marshal Sarah Chen. Diane's attorney wanted Sarah to testify about Marcus's aggressive behavior and unstable personality in the workplace. Sarah read the subpoena and laughed. She has no idea what she just did. What do you mean? I'm going to testify, and I'm going to tell the truth, that you're one of the most professional, controlled, patient people I've ever worked with, that you've never shown aggression, that you've handled violent fugitives with more restraint than most people handle traffic disputes. Sarah's smile was sharp. She handed us a character witness and doesn't realize it. Marcus felt something shift. Maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe they could actually win this. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. See you in court, Marshal. Bring your badge. You'll need it to explain why a federal agent is stalking women. Marcus screenshot it, added it to the evidence file, sent it to Jennifer with a timestamp. Her response came back immediately. She's still texting you. Even better. Keep everything. This woman is digging her own grave and doesn't even know it. Marcus looked at the calendar. 3 days until the hearing. 3 days until he'd face Diane Kellerman in court and either clear his name or watch his career crumble. He'd faced cartel enforcers, fugitive murderers, and armed standoffs. Somehow, this felt more dangerous. The Hennepin County District Court smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Marcus arrived 40 minutes early, wearing his dark suit and burgundy tie, the one he wore for federal testimony, professional, unthreatening, credible. Jennifer Chen was already there, setting up at the respondent's table. 2 accordion folders, a laptop, a legal pad covered in neat handwriting. She looked up when Marcus sat down. You ready? As I'll ever be. Remember, let me do the talking unless the judge addresses you directly. Stay calm no matter what she says. Judges watch body language. Jennifer glanced toward the entrance. Speaking of which. Diane Kellerman swept through the double doors like she was arriving at a premiere. Black dress, pearl necklace, hair professionally styled. Her attorney followed, mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who advertised on billboards. They took the petitioner's table and began unpacking what looked like a three-ring binder the size of a phone book. Jesus, Jennifer muttered. She brought props. Marcus studied Diane. She looked confident, righteous, like someone who genuinely believed she was the victim in this scenario. She glanced at him once, and her expression shifted into something practiced, fear mixed with defiance. She was already performing for the judge. Other people filtered into the courtroom. George Patterson slipped into the gallery and gave Marcus a subtle nod. Two women Marcus didn't recognize sat behind Diane, moral support or additional witnesses, he couldn't tell. At 8:55, a side door opened and a middle-aged woman in judicial robes entered. Everyone stood. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding, the bailiff announced. Morrison, Marcus felt a cold prickle. Same last name as the neighbor Diane had filed against in 2019. Could be coincidence. Morrison wasn't exactly rare, but it felt like an omen. Judge Morrison settled behind the bench and surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes. This is a hearing on a petition for a harassment restraining order. Kellerman versus Webb. Counsel, are both parties present? Yes, Your Honor, both attorneys said simultaneously. Then let's proceed. Ms. Brennan, your client filed the petition. Present your case. Diane's attorney stood. Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Diane Kellerman, has been subjected to a systematic campaign of stalking and intimidation by the respondent, Marcus Webb. Despite being a federal law enforcement officer, or perhaps because of it, Mr. Webb has used his position and resources to terrorize a woman who simply tried to enforce basic community standards. Jennifer was already writing notes, her pen moving fast. Mrs. Kellerman will testify to multiple instances of threatening behavior, Brennan continued. Following her vehicle, staring at her home, installing surveillance equipment aimed at her property, making verbal threats. She fears for her safety and believes Mr. Webb's access to firearms makes him particularly dangerous. Judge Morrison looked at Marcus, assessing. He kept his expression neutral. Call your first witness, the judge said. Petitioner calls Diane Kellerman. Diane took the stand with perfect posture, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Then she settled into the witness chair and looked at the judge with earnest, frightened eyes. Mrs. Kellerman, Brennan began, when did you first encounter the respondent? May 6th. He was moving into the property 3 doors from my home. I approached him to welcome him to the neighborhood and explain our community rules. Her voice trembled slightly. He became immediately hostile. Marcus watched her perform, the slight waver in her voice, the way she touched her throat when mentioning feeling threatened. She was good. What did he say? He told me to get off his property, not politely, aggressively. He stepped toward me in a threatening manner. I felt scared, so I called 911. And after the police left, it got worse. He started watching my house. I'd see him standing at his window just staring, sometimes for an hour or more. When I'd leave for errands, he'd follow me in his truck. Jennifer wrote something and slid it to Marcus. Security footage timeline. Marcus nodded. Did you document any of this? Brennan asked. Yes, Diane's attorney produced a stack of photos. These show Mr. Webb's security cameras pointed directly at my property. These show him standing in his window watching my house. These are screenshots from our neighborhood social media showing his threatening posts. Judge Morrison examined the photos. These cameras appear to be facing multiple directions. 2 are pointed directly at my driveway, Your Honor. I can't leave my home without being recorded. Marcus kept his breathing steady. The cameras faced his own driveway. Diane's driveway was barely visible in the far edge of one frame. Did Mr. Webb ever make direct threats? Brennan asked. Yes, he told me I'd regret this and that people like me always get what's coming to them. Diane's eyes welled with tears. He's a federal marshal. He carries a gun. I don't feel safe in my own home. The testimony continued for 20 minutes. Each answer was perfectly calibrated, emotional but not hysterical, detailed but not obviously fabricated. Diane mentioned the Morrison case once, obliquely, saying she'd dealt with difficult neighbors before but never experienced anything like Marcus's behavior. Finally, Brennan sat down. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Morrison turned to Jennifer. Cross-examination. Yes, Your Honor. Jennifer stood, holding a single sheet of paper. Mrs. Kellerman, you testified that you approached Mr. Webb on May 6th to welcome him to the neighborhood. Is that correct? Yes. And you were holding your phone, recording him. Diane hesitated. I may have been documenting HOA violations. So not welcoming him, documenting violations of a property you'd never inspected before, belonging to someone you'd never met. I could see the violations from the street. I see. Jennifer consulted her notes. You called 911 that day, correct? Yes, because I felt threatened. You felt so threatened that after hanging up with 911, you smiled. Is that correct? Diane's composure cracked slightly. I don't recall smiling. Really? Because the sheriff's deputies who responded noted in their incident report that you smiled immediately after ending the call. They also have dash cam footage. Jennifer pulled out a document. Deputy Sergeant Mike Kowalski wrote, and I quote, Petitioner appeared to smile after placing 911 call, suggesting call was not made in genuine fear. Were the deputies lying? I know, I was relieved help was coming. You also told the deputies that Mr. Webb lunged at you. Is that correct? Yes. But the body cam footage shows Mr. Webb standing approximately 15 feet away from you during the entire interaction. At no point does he move toward you. Were you mistaken about the lunging? Diane's face flushed. It felt threatening. Feelings aren't facts, Mrs. Kellerman. Jennifer's voice stayed perfectly level. You've filed 47 complaints against neighbors in the past 5 years. Is that correct? I don't know the exact number. I do, 47. County records are quite thorough. Jennifer pulled out another document. You've also filed 3 previous restraining order petitions, all dismissed. Were those neighbors also stalking you? Objection, Brennan said, rising. Relevance. Goes to credibility, Your Honor. Pattern of behavior. Judge Morrison nodded. Overruled. Answer the question, Mrs. Kellerman. Those were different situations, Diane said tightly. Different how? You claimed those neighbors threatened you too. You claimed they followed you too. You used almost identical language in those petitions as you used in this one. Jennifer set down 3 documents side by side. In fact, entire paragraphs are word for word identical. Did you copy and paste from old petitions? The courtroom was silent. I used similar language because the situations were similar. Or because you have a template for making false accusations against neighbors you want removed from the community. Objection. Sustained. Counsel rephrase. Jennifer didn't rephrase, she moved on. You claim Mr. Webb follows you. Can you provide any evidence of this? Photos of his vehicle behind yours, witness statements, anything. I didn't always have my camera ready. How convenient, but you had your camera ready to photograph his boat, his dock, his trash bins, his security cameras, and his license plates, multiple times, just not ready when he was allegedly following you. Diane's jaw tightened. He was careful. Or it never happened. Jennifer pulled out a thick folder. I have GPS data from Mr. Webb's vehicle showing his exact locations for every day you claim he followed you. On May 8th, you claim he followed you to Target. His GPS shows he was in Minneapolis at the federal courthouse. On May 12th, you claim he followed you to the grocery store. He was conducting a witness transport in St. Cloud. On May 19th. That's enough, Ms. Chen, Judge Morrison interrupted. I understand your point. Jennifer nodded. No further questions. Diane stepped down from the witness stand, her confidence visibly shaken. Her attorney called one of the women from the gallery, a neighbor who testified she'd seen Marcus watching Diane's house. But under cross-examination, she admitted she'd never actually seen him do anything threatening, had never spoken to him, and had only heard about his behavior from Diane herself. The second witness lasted 5 minutes before admitting the same thing. Judge Morrison looked tired. "Mr. Webb, do you wish to testify?" Jennifer stood. The respondent calls Deputy U.S. Marshal Sarah Chen as a character witness. Sarah took the stand, was sworn in, and sat down with military posture. "Deputy Chen, how long have you worked with Marcus Webb?" 7 years. "In your professional observation, would you characterize him as aggressive, unstable, or threatening?" "Absolutely not. Marshal Webb is one of the most controlled, professional people I've ever worked with. I've seen him de-escalate armed fugitives with nothing but conversation. I've watched him maintain perfect composure under extreme stress. The idea that he'd stalk or threaten a civilian is absurd." "Thank you, no further questions." Brennan didn't even bother cross-examining. Judge Morrison looked at the clock, then at Marcus. "Mr. Webb, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you follow Mrs. Kellerman, threaten her, or stalk her in any way?" Marcus stood. "No, Your Honor, I didn't." "Did you install security cameras to surveil her property?" "No, Your Honor. The cameras face my own property. Mrs. Kellerman's house is barely visible in one camera's peripheral view." Judge Morrison nodded slowly. Then she looked at Diane. "Mrs. Kellerman, I've reviewed all the evidence. I've heard the testimony. I find no credible evidence that Mr. Webb has engaged in harassment or stalking. Your petition is denied." Diane's face went white. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm concerned about the pattern of complaints and petitions you've filed. Making false accusations is serious. Consider this a warning." The gavel struck. Marcus felt something release in his chest. Relief, vindication, exhaustion all at once. But he wasn't done yet. As they exited the courtroom, Diane stood frozen in the hallway, her attorney speaking in urgent, low tones beside her. Marcus could see the humiliation radiating off her in waves, the rigid set of her shoulders, the white-knuckled grip on her binder, the spots of color high on her cheeks. Jennifer was packing files into her briefcase, already mentally moving to her next appointment. That went better than expected. Judge Morrison saw right through her. "I'll file for sanctions next week. Get your attorney's fees covered." "Thanks for everything," Marcus said, shaking her hand. "Stay clear of her. No contact, no engagement. People like Diane don't accept losing gracefully." Jennifer snapped her briefcase shut. "Congratulations, Marshal. You can breathe now." Marcus nodded, but something felt unfinished. The restraining order was denied, yes, but the HOA fines still existed. The harassment campaign hadn't ended, it had just been interrupted. He walked toward the exit, passing the alcove where Diane stood with her attorney. She looked up as he passed, and their eyes met. Pure hatred stared back at him, not embarrassment, not contrition, just rage. Then Marcus saw him. Todd Kellerman stood near the elevator bank, 20 feet away, wearing a charcoal suit and holding a subpoena notice in his hand. He looked confused, uncomfortable, like he'd arrived at the wrong address and didn't know how to leave. Marcus's steps slowed. He hadn't requested Todd be subpoenaed. Jennifer had decided against it, which meant. Todd saw Marcus at the same moment. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by confusion, then something like dread as he glanced past Marcus toward where Diane stood. The pieces were falling into place, visibly behind Todd's eyes. Marcus made a decision. He walked straight toward Todd, hand extended, voice carrying just enough to be heard. "Todd, thanks for coming." Todd shook his hand automatically, still processing. "Marshal Webb, I got a subpoena, but I'm not sure why. The case number listed." He looked down at the paper in his hand, then back at Marcus, realization dawning. "This is a restraining order hearing." It's over." "I don't understand. Why would I be subpoenaed for?" Todd's voice trailed off. as he finally looked past Marcus and saw his wife standing in the hallway, frozen like a deer in headlights. The confusion on his face shifted to understanding, then to horror. "Diane," Todd's voice came out strangled. Marcus watched it happen in real time, Todd looking at his wife, looking at Marcus, looking at the courtroom door they just exited, doing the math. "The neighbor you've been," Todd couldn't finish the sentence. His face had gone pale. "The guy you filed the restraining order against, that's Marcus Webb." Diane opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Your supervisor," Todd continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "the regional marshal I report to on federal cases, the guy I worked the Hernandez prosecution with, that Marcus Webb." Marcus said nothing. Sometimes silence was the most powerful weapon. Todd looked between them again, and Marcus could see the man's entire career flashing before his eyes. Every case they'd worked together, every professional interaction, every email and phone call and coordination meeting that would now be colored by this catastrophic revelation. "You didn't tell me," Todd said to his wife. "You didn't tell me who he was." Diane finally found her voice. "I didn't know. How was I supposed to?" "You filed a restraining order against my colleague, against the guy I answer to professionally." Todd's voice was shaking now, whether from anger or panic, Marcus couldn't tell. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "He was threatening me," Diane said, but her voice lacked conviction now. She could see her husband's expression, could see how badly this was playing. "Threatening you?" Todd looked at Marcus. "Sir, I don't know what to say. I had no idea she was." Marcus kept his voice calm, professional. "We need to talk, not here." He gestured to a small attorney conference room off the main hallway. Todd followed without hesitation, his face still ashen. Diane started to follow, but Marcus held up a hand. "Just Todd." Her face flushed red, but she stayed in the hallway. Inside the conference room, Marcus closed the door and turned to face Todd. The prosecutor looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. "I need you to understand something," Marcus said quietly. "Your wife has been wagging a harassment campaign against me for 6 weeks. False 911 calls, fabricated HOA violations, surveillance. She's photographed federal vehicles at my property, unmarked cars used for witness protection operations. She's posted about suspicious government activity on social media, creating security risks for active cases." Todd closed his eyes. "Oh God." "She's filed complaints with the county that triggered inspections and investigations. She spread rumors in the neighborhood that I'm dangerous and unstable. She's cost me thousands in legal fees and put my security clearance at risk." Marcus paused. "And today, she committed perjury in court by claiming I stalked and threatened her." "Sir, I swear I didn't know." "I believe you." Marcus did believe him. Todd looked genuinely devastated. "But here's the situation. What your wife has done constitutes multiple crimes: false police reports, perjury, potentially obstruction of federal operations. I could file charges, should file charges." Todd's knees seemed to buckle slightly. He leaned against the conference table. "But I'm not going to," Marcus continued, "under one condition." Todd looked up, hope and dread mixed on his face. "What condition?" "This stops today, right now, all of it." Marcus's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. "She withdraws every HOA complaint. She issues a written apology to the neighborhood retracting her statements about me. She resigns from the HOA board, and she never contacts me again, ever." "Done," Todd said immediately. "I'm not finished. She has 48 hours to comply. If she doesn't, I file criminal charges for the false police reports and perjury, and I make sure every federal prosecutor in the district knows what happened here, that a colleague's wife tried to sabotage a sitting U.S. Marshal over dock regulations." Todd flinched. "Your professional reputation would survive," Marcus said. "You didn't do anything wrong, but it would be embarrassing. People would talk. Every case we've worked together would get scrutinized. Defense attorneys would try to use it to impeach your credibility." "I understand." Do you? Because your wife doesn't seem to understand consequences. She's destroyed 3 families in your neighborhood. She filed 47 complaints in 5 years, 3 previous restraining orders, all dismissed. This is who she is, Todd. This is what she does. Todd was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. I knew she was intense about the HOA, but I didn't know it was this bad. I work long hours. I'm not home much. She handles the neighborhood stuff. She handles it by terrorizing people. I believe you. Todd looked at the floor. The Morrison case, James Morrison, 2019. You probably saw that record. I co-signed that petition because she told me he'd threatened her, told me she was scared. I believed her because she's my wife, but the judge dismissed it, said there was no evidence. He looked up at Marcus. I should have asked more questions. Yes, you should have. This won't happen again. I promise you, sir, I'll make sure she complies with everything you've asked for. 48 hours, Marcus repeated. Todd nodded and moved toward the door, then stopped. What about our working relationship, the cases we have pending? Marcus considered. Todd was a good prosecutor, ethical, thorough. The Hernandez case and 2 other ongoing investigations needed his expertise. Personal issues aside, he was professional. Nothing changes professionally, Marcus said. We keep working together like adults, but if your wife violates any part of this agreement, all bets are off. Understood. Thank you, sir. I mean it. Thank you for not. Todd's voice cracked slightly. Thank you for giving me a chance to fix this. He left the conference room. Marcus waited 60 seconds, then followed. The hallway was empty except for Diane, who stood near the elevators looking small and diminished. Her attorney was gone. Her binder sat on a bench, abandoned. Todd was nowhere to be seen, probably already in the parking garage, calling her, laying down the law. Diane looked at Marcus as he walked past. Her expression was complicated, humiliation, rage, and something that might have been fear. For the first time since this started, she looked like someone who'd just realized she'd picked a fight she couldn't win. Marcus didn't acknowledge her. He walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. When the doors opened, he stepped inside and turned around. Diane was still standing there, watching him. The doors closed. Marcus leaned against the elevator wall and exhaled slowly. His hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline, relief, exhaustion. The hearing had gone well. The revelation with Todd had been unexpected, but ultimately worked in his favor. But he knew Jennifer was right. People like Diane didn't accept losing gracefully. 48 hours would tell him if this was really over, or if it was just the eye of the storm. His phone buzzed as he reached the parking garage. Text from Sarah, how'd it go? Marcus typed back, restraining order denied, long story, tell you at the office. Another text came through immediately, this one from an unknown number. Marcus's stomach tightened. But when he opened it, it was from George Patterson. Heard it went well. Welcome home, neighbor. Beers in the fridge if you need one. Marcus smiled despite himself. Maybe Pine Ridge Shores would actually become the sanctuary he'd hoped for. He got in his truck and headed back to Minneapolis, already mentally cataloging what he needed to do over the next 2 days. Monitor for compliance, document everything, prepare to escalate if necessary. Because he'd learned one thing in 23 years of federal law enforcement: people showed you who they really were under pressure. And Diane Kellerman had shown him exactly who she was. Now he'd find out if she was capable of change, or if this war was far from over. The email arrived at 6:43 Wednesday morning, 36 hours after the courthouse confrontation. Marcus was halfway through his first coffee when his phone chimed. From Pine Ridge Shores HOA Board. Subject, Notice of Violation Withdrawal Property, 247 Lakeview Drive. The email was terse, legalistic, drafted by someone who clearly resented every word. All pending violations against Marcus Webb's property were hereby withdrawn. All assessed fines were cancelled. The matter was closed. No explanation, no apology, just a bureaucratic notification that he'd won. Marcus forwarded it to Jennifer Chen with a single line, "First domino." Her response came back within minutes, "Waiting on the other two, don't celebrate yet." The second email arrived Thursday afternoon. This one was longer, clearly written by an attorney, and addressed to the entire Pine Ridge Shores community email list. I, Diane Kellerman, wish to address statements I made regarding Marcus Webb, resident of 247 Lakeview Drive. I acknowledge that I made unfounded claims about Mr. Webb's character and behavior. These statements were not based on fact and were inappropriate. I retract all such statements and apologize to Mr. Webb and to the community for any confusion or concern my words may have caused. I take full responsibility for my errors in judgment. Marcus read it 3 times. The language was sanitized, passive, designed to minimize culpability while technically meeting his demands. But it was public. Everyone in Pine Ridge Shores would see it. His phone rang immediately. George Patterson. "Did you see the email?" George sounded gleeful. "Just read it." The neighborhood group chat is exploding. People are asking what happened. Diane hasn't responded to anyone. George laughed. 37 unread messages and counting. She's probably hiding under her bed. George. I know, don't gloat. But Marcus, you have no idea what this means to people here. She's been untouchable for years. Now everyone knows she can blade. After they hung up, Marcus checked the Pine Ridge Facebook group on his laptop. George hadn't been exaggerating. The community thread under Diane's apology had turned into a cathartic outpouring. About time someone stood up to her. She did the same thing to us in 2021, threatened our family for months. I was terrified of her, literally afraid to check my mail. Can we talk about how she forced the Hendersons to sell? They lost $40,000 because of her harassment. Marcus closed the laptop. He'd wanted vindication, not a digital mob, but he couldn't control what happened next. The community had been waiting for someone to crack Diane's armor, and now the floodgates were open. The third email came Friday morning, CC'd to the entire HOA board and all residents. Effective immediately, I am resigning from the Pine Ridge Shores HOA Board of Directors. Personal circumstances require me to step back from community leadership. I wish the board and our neighborhood continued success. It was signed Diane Kellerman, and beneath her name was a timestamp, 11:47 p.m. Thursday night. Marcus imagined the scene, Todd standing over her shoulder, maybe even typing it himself. The arguments that must have preceded it, the humiliation of being forced to resign from the position she'd wielded like a weapon for years. Jennifer called within the hour. "All 3 conditions met," she said. "Violation, withdrawal, public apology, resignation. You want me to file for sanctions on your attorney's fees." Marcus thought about it, dragging Diane back to court, forcing her to pay his legal bills, watching her squirm under cross-examination again. "No," he said. "You sure? She cost you almost 20 grand. "I'm sure it's over. Let it stay over." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "You're a better person than I am." "Just tired." After he hung up, Marcus stared out his office window at downtown Minneapolis. The Hernandez case was wrapping up successfully. The witness was secure in a new location. The cartel suspects were in custody. His professional life was intact. And his cabin, his sanctuary, was finally truly his. That weekend, Marcus drove back to Pine Ridge Shores. He half expected to feel anxiety as he passed through the gates, but instead he felt only relief. The nightmare was over. His cabin looked exactly as he'd left it. The docks stretched into blue water. The pine trees swayed in the breeze. It was June now, warm enough to sit on the deck without a jacket. Marcus was unloading groceries when he heard footsteps on his gravel driveway. He tensed instinctively, but it was just George, carrying 2 bottles of beer and wearing a grin. "Welcome home," George said, handing him a bottle. They sat on the deck and drank in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then George cleared his throat. "You should know, The board met last night. Emergency session to elect new leadership. Who'd they choose? Tom Henderson. Remember the couple Diane ran off in 2021? Tom's brother still lives here. They convinced him to run unopposed. George took a long drink. First thing he did was propose new bylaws. No single board member can file complaints without majority approval. No fines over $500 without a hearing. Term limits. Closing the barn door after the horse escaped. Better late than never. George looked at him seriously. You changed something here, Marcus. People aren't afraid anymore. 3 different neighbors have already told me they're considering filing formal complaints about Diane's past behavior. Real complaints with documentation. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I didn't want to start a war. You didn't start it, you finished it. There's a difference. Over the next hour, more neighbors stopped by. A middle-aged couple Marcus had never met brought homemade cookies and thanked him for standing up to her. A retired teacher named Margaret shared that Diane had tried to fine her for having the wrong color mailbox, a 2-year battle that had cost Margaret thousands in legal fees. She's broken, Margaret said quietly. I saw her yesterday at the mailbox. She looked right through me like I was invisible. Todd was with her, practically dragging her back to the house. Where are they now? Marcus asked. Haven't seen them since yesterday morning. Curtains are drawn, no cars in the driveway all weekend. After everyone left, Marcus sat on his dock and cast his fishing line into the still water. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. For the first time since he'd inherited this place, he felt actual peace. His phone buzzed. Work email, Todd Kellerman. Marcus hesitated, then opened it. Marshall Webb, per your request, confirming all conditions have been met. Personal matter, I've requested and received approval for a transfer to the District of South Dakota, effective August 1st. Family needs a fresh start. This won't impact the Hernandez case or any pending matters. Will complete all necessary work before transition. Thank you for your discretion in this difficult situation. A.J. Todd Kellerman. Marcus read it twice. Todd was leaving, moving his family out of state, away from the wreckage Diane had created. It wasn't technically required. Marcus had only demanded Diane comply, not that they relocate, but Todd had clearly decided it was necessary. Part of Marcus felt bad. Todd was a good prosecutor. Minnesota was losing a talented attorney because his wife couldn't control her worst impulses. But another part, the part that had spent 6 weeks being harassed, surveilled, and falsely accused, felt only relief. He typed a brief response. Transfer understood. Good luck in South Dakota. You're a good prosecutor. They're lucky to have you. He almost added, control your household, but deleted it. Todd had learned that lesson the hard way. As the sun dipped below the tree line, Marcus saw movement 3 houses down, Diane's house. Someone was carrying boxes to a car. Then another person, Todd, probably, emerged with more boxes. They were packing. Marcus watched for a moment, then deliberately turned away and focused on his fishing line. Whatever happened next in Diane and Todd's lives wasn't his concern. He'd set boundaries, enforced consequences, and moved on. That's what healthy people did. His line jerked suddenly, a fish fighting hard. Marcus reeled it in carefully, a decent-sized bass, maybe 3 pounds, beautiful. He held it for a moment, admiring the way light caught on its scales, then gently removed the hook and lowered it back into the water. The bass flicked its tail and disappeared into the depths. Some things were worth catching, some were worth releasing. The same was true of battles. Sunday morning, Marcus woke to the sound of a truck engine and voices. He looked out the window and saw a moving van parked in front of Diane's house. 2 men were loading furniture while Todd supervised. Diane was nowhere to be seen, probably already gone or hiding inside where neighbors couldn't see her. By noon, the moving van was gone. By evening, a real estate agent was hammering a for sale sign into the front lawn. George texted, "She's really gone, can't believe it, thanks for freeing us." Marcus didn't respond. He wasn't a liberator or a hero. He was just a guy who'd wanted to fish in peace and had been forced to defend himself. But he'd won. That was enough. Monday morning, Marcus drove back to Minneapolis for work. As he passed through the Pine Ridge gates, he realized he was already looking forward to coming back next weekend. The cabin wasn't tainted anymore. It wasn't a battlefield. It was home. His phone rang. Sarah Chen. "Hey, you survived," she said. "How's it feel?" "Weird quiet." "Quiet's good. You deserve quiet." She paused. "So the Kellerman situation is completely resolved." "Completely. And Todd's transferring. South Dakota, fresh start." "Good for them, good for you." Sarah's tone shifted to business. "Ready to dive back into actual work? We've got a new fugitive case that could use your expertise." Marcus smiled. "Send me the file, I'm ready." Because he was, the nightmare was over. His professional reputation was intact. His sanctuary was secure. Some battles you fought because you had to. Some you won because you were better prepared, more patient, and willing to let your opponents destroy themselves. Diane Kellerman had taught him that the hard way. And now, finally, he could move on. 3 weeks passed like a slow exhale. Marcus fell into a rhythm: Minneapolis during the week, cabin on weekends. The Hernandez case closed successfully with all witnesses protected and 3 cartel members convicted. Todd Kellerman's prosecution work had been flawless, professional to the end. They'd exchanged polite emails about case transitions, never once mentioning what had happened in that courthouse hallway. The cabin became what Marcus had originally hoped for: quiet mornings with coffee on the deck, evenings fishing until the sun set, nights so silent he could hear his own heartbeat. The security cameras stayed up, but rarely captured anything more interesting than deer wandering through his yard or George Patterson walking his ancient golden retriever. The Pine Ridge Shores community transformed in subtle ways. The new HOA board sent out a newsletter, the first in years that didn't include threats or violation notices. They announced a neighborhood barbecue for the 4th of July. Attendance was optional, fines for non-participation were eliminated, and the phrase, family-friendly community standards, was conspicuously absent. Marcus almost didn't go. Social gatherings weren't his strength, and he'd spent his entire career maintaining careful distance from civilians. But George had personally stopped by Friday evening with an invitation and a six-pack. "You have to come," George said. "People want to meet the guy who saved them from the Wicked Witch." "I didn't save anyone, I just defended myself." "Sometimes that's the same thing." George set the beer on Marcus's deck railing. "Besides, Tom Henderson is grilling, former competitive barbecue circuit. You haven't lived until you've tried his brisket." So Saturday afternoon, Marcus found himself walking toward the community pavilion by the lake, carrying a store-bought pie because he didn't cook and couldn't show up empty-handed. 40 or 50 people milled around picnic tables, kids ran shrieking toward the water, and smoke rose from an impressive array of grills. Tom Henderson, tall, bearded, friendly, spotted Marcus immediately and waved him over. "Marshall Webb, George said you'd come." Tom shook his hand with genuine warmth. "Thanks for that, by the way. My brother lost his house because of Diane's harassment. Seeing her finally get stopped, it means something to our family." "Just wanted to be left alone," Marcus said, uncomfortable with the gratitude. "Sometimes being left alone requires drawing a line in the sand. You drew it." Tom gestured toward the grills. "Briskets ready in 20. Grab a beer, meet some neighbors who aren't trying to destroy your life." The afternoon was surprisingly pleasant. Margaret, the retired teacher, introduced him to her book club. A couple from across the lake thanked him for standing up to tyranny while their toddler tried to eat sand. George regaled a group with an only slightly exaggerated version of the courthouse showdown. Marcus mostly listened, observed, occasionally smiled. These were good people, normal people, the kind who'd been quietly terrorized by someone with too much power and no accountability. As the sun started to set, Marcus found himself sitting on the dock with George, both of them holding beers and watching the water turn orange. You hear about the house? George asked. Diane's. Yes, sold in 8 days. Cash offer closed last week. New owners are a retired couple from Iowa. Very quiet, very boring. George grinned. In other words, perfect neighbors. Marcus took a long drink. Good for them. You ever wonder where she ended up, Diane? No. Really, not even a little curious. Marcus considered it. Did he wonder if Diane had learned anything, if she'd changed, if she was terrorizing some new neighborhood in South Dakota? No, he said again. What she does now isn't my problem. I set boundaries. She violated them. There were consequences. That's the end of the story. George nodded slowly. You know what's funny? Everyone expected you to gloat, to parade around like you'd won something, but you just moved on like it never happened. Because that's what healthy people do. Healthy people, George laughed. Most of us aren't healthy. We hold grudges. We want revenge. We fantasize about our enemies suffering. He looked at Marcus. You really don't care if she's suffering. Marcus thought about it honestly. Did he care if Diane was miserable in South Dakota? If Todd resented her for destroying his career? If she was lonely, isolated, forced to confront what she'd done? I care that she's not hurting anyone else, Marcus said finally. Beyond that, it's not my responsibility to punish her. The system did that. Natural consequences did that. I'm just here to fish. As if to prove his point, his line jerked. Marcus set down his beer and reeled in a beautiful northern pike, maybe 4 pounds. He held it up for George to see, then carefully released it back into the water. You always let them go? George asked. Unless I'm eating it that night, yeah, catch and release. Metaphor for your whole life, isn't it? George stood up, joints creaking. Catch the problem, deal with it, let it go. Don't hold on to things that'll just weigh you down. After George left, Marcus stayed on the dock until full dark. His phone buzzed once, work email about a new case starting Monday. Fugitive recovery, potentially dangerous, exactly the kind of thing he was good at. But that was Monday's problem. Tonight, he was just a guy sitting on a dock, listening to loons call across the water, finally at peace in the place he'd inherited from an uncle who'd understood the value of silence. His phone buzzed again. Not work this time. A text from Sarah Chen. Saw the Kellerman transfer went through. How you holding up? Marcus typed back. Good, really good. The cabin working out. Yeah, it's perfect. Good, you deserve perfect. See you Monday. Marcus set his phone down and looked up at the stars. They were spectacular out here, away from city lights. The kind of view that made you feel small and significant at the same time. A splash in the water, something big jumping, chasing something smaller. The eternal cycle of predator and prey, threat and survival. Nature didn't apologize for being what it was. Neither did people like Diane Kellerman. But nature also had balance, consequences, systems that corrected themselves when one element became too dominant. Marcus had simply been part of that correction. Movement caught his eye. A car pulling up to Diane's old house, the new owners probably checking on their investment. Lights came on inside. Voices carried across the water, happy and normal. Life moving forward, spaces being reclaimed, balance being restored. Marcus's phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. He almost didn't check it, but curiosity won. You won, congratulations, I hope you're happy. No name, but Marcus knew. Diane's final shot across the bow. One last attempt to make him feel something, guilt, satisfaction, anger, anything. He read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Because that's what you did with people who couldn't let go. You stopped engaging. You stopped giving them power. You moved on. Marcus stood up from the dock and walked back to his cabin. Inside, he made dinner, nothing fancy, just grilled fish and vegetables, and ate on the deck while reading a thriller novel he'd been ignoring for months. The protagonist was a detective hunting a serial killer, dramatically tortured and obsessed with revenge. Marcus found himself skimming the revenge parts. They felt exhausting, unnecessary. In real life, revenge was overrated, justice was sufficient, moving on was better than winning. Around 10 p.m., his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but it was George. "Turn on your porch light," George said without preamble. "Why? Just do it." Marcus flipped the switch. His front yard illuminated, and there, standing in a loose semicircle, were maybe 15 neighbors. They started clapping. Slow at first, then louder. Some whistled. Someone shouted, "Thank you." Marcus stood frozen on his deck, completely unsure how to respond. He wasn't a hero. He'd just been a guy defending his property rights. This felt excessive, embarrassing, wrong. But then he saw their faces. Margaret, who'd fought Diane over a mailbox for 2 years. Tom, whose brother lost his house. The young couple with the toddler who'd been fined for having toys in their yard. George, who'd kept his head down for a decade to avoid becoming a target. They weren't applauding him. They were applauding themselves for surviving, for being free, for having hope that their community could be something other than a battlefield. Marcus raised his hand in acknowledgement. The applause continued for another 30 seconds, then people started drifting away, back to their own homes, their own lives. George was the last to leave. He gave Marcus a 2-fingered salute and called out, "Sleep well, neighbor." Marcus went inside, locked the door, and sat on his couch in the dark for a long time. He thought about Diane, about Todd, about the months of harassment and stress. He thought about the restraining order hearing, the courthouse revelation, the emails and resignations. Then he thought about the future, about weekends here, about fishing and silence and stars, about a community that was healing because one person had finally said no. Some battles you fought because you had to. Some you won because you were patient. And some you walked away from because the victory wasn't in destroying your enemy, it was in refusing to let them destroy you. Marcus went to bed that night and slept 10 hours straight, dreamless and deep. When he woke Sunday morning, the lake was glass smooth and the sun was already warm. He made coffee, grabbed his fishing rod, and walked to the dock. As he cast his line into the water, he realized he wasn't thinking about Diane Kellerman at all. He was thinking about what kind of fish he might catch. And that, more than any legal victory or forced apology, was the truest measure of winning. He'd gotten his life back. The rest was just noise.